Well, hello there. How is everyone? I hope you're all well on this fabulous Friday. And it is fabulous today. We're doing a long live later on today. And I hope to see some of you there as we try to be able, like last year, to send a family on holiday in the summer. But anyway, we're going to get straight into the meat and potatoes this morning because not only do you look amazing and you deserve it, but look, I think yesterday I did a video and it was based on some information that was coming out around Moscow, Idaho, specifically talking about the Vandals Football Club and the students of the University of Idaho. Now, the issue that we spoke about yesterday was the fact that it would appear that earlier on in the year, a group of around 50 students had gone to the home, and when we say home, we mean like the off-campus student home of a student, Timmy, little Timmy. Now, we'll ignore Timmy's name because, first of all, I do struggle with Timmy as a name. Maybe Tim or Steve would be a better name, but look, they chose Timmy. But anyway, that's not what this is about. This is about the action itself. And it was that these students, between 40 and 50 of them, dressed in masks and brandishing weapons, went to his home. And what would ensue is an assault. He was assaulted. And yesterday, if you haven't watched the video, by the way, have a look at it. I did it yesterday. And you saw the injuries that were sustained. And his legal counsel had turned around and said, look, luckily no one died this time. But I asked the question as to what would have happened if he would have died. What would have happened if when he fall against the floor and hit his head, I meant to say fell. You know me in English, we're not friends. What would have happened if he'd have died? How do we think that would have been spun in the media? Because actually, we didn't learn about this at all. We didn't learn about it at all until his legal counsel turned around and took this public because he felt that it was being swept under the rug by the University of Idaho. And not only that the Moscow Police Department seemed to be dragging their heels in dealing with it. I believe the phrase was that it was being brushed under the rug and you could almost hear the brush. It was that loud. And look, I think it's important for us to step back and consider this when considering what the other cases that we're dealing with and some of the other things that have been said around this case. Because we was told that this was a sleepy town. This was a sleepy place that hadn't really succumbed to the crimes that are seen elsewhere. They certainly hadn't had a murder since 2015. I suppose it depends how you perceive murder and how deep you want to dig into some of the people who have lost their lives, whether it be through accidents, whether it be through self-deletion perhaps. But look, the record, on the record, it was that they hadn't seen a murder, and this seemed to be a really cool little town with nothing really happening, and this was shocking to them. So what happened? Did the Idaho 4 case happen and then the place descend into chaos? Or is it just because everybody is now watching that we are starting to notice some of the things coming apart at the seams? But some of the more interesting things that we spoke about yesterday in this situation that happened with little Timmy is that, again, a large group would go to a home, brandishing weapons, wearing masks. Now, little Timmy was so scared by what had happened, it was said that he would start sleeping with a knife. And I wonder whether that was something that you would do. Was it just simply a knee-jerk reaction from what happened to him? And that would, to me, lead me to believe that he believed that this was not over with, that he was further at risk. And not only that, but he felt that there would be a potential for someone to enter his home and attack him while he was in his bed. and the best way to protect himself was to sleep with a knife. So what we know in the Idaho 4 case is that there was a knife sheath found in the bed of Madison Mogen. And we know that earlier on in the night that there seemed to be a conversation surrounding Madison and Kaylee and the fact that something had happened, and there was a conversation that seemed to allude to the fact that there could be repercussions to that. And it makes me wonder what someone would be willing to do in the event that they felt that potentially there could be repercussions to something that they had done. Is it out of the realms of possibility that the victims of the Idaho 4 massacre were already in fear of retribution for some reason? And what clues were they that this was indeed something that should be considered? We could look back and consider the fact that some of the locks and doors within the home were being changed, were being looked at to make sure they were functional. We can look at the crime itself and consider yet again as to whether this is a crime that we truly believe could have been done by one person, seemingly one person who had never been really in trouble with the law apart from the theft of a sister's phone. Could this person on their own really have entered this home and done this crime in such a short space of time and seemingly to such a, how can I say, with such precision, shall we say that? Now, we all saw 1122 King Road come down, and what I did learn from that demolition was that that house wasn't particularly built well. Wasn't particularly built well at all. And I would say that not only is it not beyond the realms of possibility, but I think it's highly likely that whatever happened in that house on that night, likely the sounds of it travelled around that house. And anyone who was in there would have heard what was going on. So we have to ask ourselves a question. Did something happen in that house that would rouse other members of the house and they would come out to try and help and assist their friends or their housemates? And this would result in more people perhaps becoming victims than were initially thought or initially aimed at? Or, yeah, I think you just have to consider that. Or did some people enter this home and actually execute exactly who they meant to? And leave exactly who they meant to? I've spoken about a couple of times on how I have had personal experience with when things can spiral out of control incredibly quickly. Especially when certain things such as steroid use comes into the mix. And the fact that it can indeed cause people to act in a manner that otherwise they wouldn't. And the more that comes out around Moscow, Idaho, and the more little things that we're getting to see, the more certain stories that were always on the peripheral of the Idaho 4 case seem to make sense. Not just with the Idaho 4, but such people such as Hudson Lindau. Did Hudson Lindau truly drown, and was that of his own volition through misadventure, if you like? Or was there more to that? Because I suppose the big question is if these things went a different way, what would we know? Or is it a fair assumption that if someone can hide things under the rug, if they can brush it away, if they think that they're above the law, what are they willing to do? And what are those around them willing to do to make sure that those things stay silent? Now, don't get me wrong, and I'll leave you this again. I am not naive enough to believe that there is no way that Brian Kohberger could have done this crime. But I personally haven't seen enough, and I would challenge anybody out there who believes that he is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt to explain to me exactly what proof they have of that. But what I will say, and again I will challenge people, to consider the things that we do know and the things that are on the peripheral of this case, and get them to tell me whether they truly believe that none of these things should be considered. And I ask you this: if Brian Kohberger is indeed proven to be innocent of this crime, or not found guilty of this crime, do you then feel that some of these things that are floating around on the peripheral should indeed be looked at? Or will you still believe that they have no place in this case whatsoever? A fraternity fight. A fight so bad that the family of one of the victims were looking to return to Moscow, Idaho to make sure they are okay. Two of the victims being caught on audio seemingly suggesting that there would be repercussions to something. And then later on that night, all of these people would end up deceased. And just weeks later, we would hear of another group of around 50 students going to another home and attacking another student, who would end up having to sleep in bed with a knife. Let me know down below what you think, and I'll catch you all in the next one.